I'm not disparaging him because he's passed away now, but think about all the people James Yeager sold on preparing for the apocalypse. Like all their food that they bought back in 2005 after, a 10-day contractor band camp in Tennessee has gone bad, but their ammo hasn't.
No,
I mean, all that ammo is going to come flooding back onto the market. All those guns, all those magazines.
and this is something that I, you and I were talking about this before that we started recording. I remember distinctly we in the early aughts we were at gun shows as an exhibitor every single weekend, and I was Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, Michigan, we were all over the place. And as a matter of fact, there were some weekends where we had a crew in one city and there was another crew in another city doing the thing. And it was like people don't realize that RCS started off actually not making holsters at all. We were a tactical gear dealer. And so I was front and center to the boom that happened after the assault weapons ban sunsetted and all the accessories that came out after that. I mean, the number of M93A stocks I sold, and Magpul followers and things like that would stagger the mind. But like during that era, it was like there was this hunger. People couldn't get enough. Well, then leading up to the 2008 election, we called it the Obamageddon. Like everyone was panic buying. And, we'd be at gun shows and guys would sell out and then sometimes they'd sell out on a Saturday. They wouldn't even show up for Sunday because they'd sold their entire inventory. And so it was all these ARs going out the door. And I remember it was one of my first exposures to panic buys where I was like, it can't go on forever. But like week after week, it just seemed like there was no end in sight. And then I remember, it was kind of around just after Christmas when like the demand stopped, right? Like people weren't buying like they had been. And we were like, well, that's it. The other shoe dropped. That was the end of that. And I was wrong because I had never thought about what the real double-edged sword was to this thing. And that was what started happening in like the March, April after the inauguration. Because then all of these guns started coming back and walking the show aisles again as private sale things where these dudes had never even shot the damn thing. They bought it because they were like, oh my God, I won't be able to. And then, it's like, well, you paid the credit card bill, you had the Christmas presents, the thing, oh, now the kids got to get into travel baseball, whatever. So it was like that money needed to come back out of the budget somewhere. And so these guys were selling brand new guns for private sale for cash money that was usually less than what the dealer paid for it originally from the distributor. And the worst part about it was that dealer was sitting at the gun show trying to turn the inventory he'd bought at the height of the panic. And so he was like, staring at the fact that like he's got 2 or 3 more deliveries of this size coming that he has no idea how he's going to turn them and pay those invoices. Meanwhile, he's competing with his former customers for that same business because these are guns. They don't wear out. It's not a Chevy that's going to rust out or have the electrical system go bad. Like a gun is a machine that is hard to wear out. And so you look at what that does when a new glut of guns arrives on the market that wasn't factored into the manufacturer's mindset. We're staring at that coming up here in the next few years with the boomer generation because the boomers, for a large part of it, were the super consumers that were powering this industry. And they have been collecting guns and stacking ammo and spare mags. And I have friends, you and I are mutual friends with a lot of them, where it's like they have a collection at their house that is staggering. It's like they don't just have like this rifle. They've got like these 8 variations of this rifle, and they've got every optic that was issued, with the SOCOM contract for this. And like it's like a weird. It's either a meticulous collection or an insane person hoard, and the line is kind of fuzzy as to where the boundary is between those two things. But all those collections are going to come back out in clumps because as these guys head off to the nursing home, there's not a generation to hand them down to.
And not at the value that people think they are. I mean, like, I ask people all the time, I'm like, would you ever buy a Patek Philippe Nautilus? And they're like, oh, that's a $40,000 watch. I'm like, you have $85,000 in guns. Like at least with a Nautilus, I could throw the box and papers in my carry-on and fly to England and sell it if I had to.
Yeah.
Like the market is much larger, and if I have to transport it, there's no legal restrictions on a watch, and so there's just also a different mindset of what I tell guys, um, younger guys, especially dudes in the military that I run into, and they're like, "Man, I want this gun, I want that gun, I want that gun." I'm like, you're already in the Ranger Regiment. You're already at Third Special Forces Group. You're already at Marshall. You have a whole locker full of guns and rockets and mortars and machine guns. Buy a rifle. Like, yes, you should have a rifle. Yeah. The idea that you need a recce gun and a sniper rifle and a CQB gun and a general purpose gun. And I tell people, it's like, man, if I had been a little bit more fiscally responsible at my time, I would have saved myself from a lot of crunches that I got myself in the 20s by having weird totems of, weaponry that I just didn't need. And it becomes a burden to own. And I'm not saying that to shoot myself in the foot. There's plenty of meat on the bone for everyone to make money, functionally owning guns. But, a lot of these guys that get in these pinches that sell guns, sell them at a huge loss, a loss that you would kick, you'd fire your financial advisor if he went and bought something and then sold it 6 months to 18 months later at a 40% loss. He wouldn't be getting any more of your money. That would be the end. So, and all that's going to come flooding on the market. And to a certain degree, I think there needs to be a contraction. I mean, for a while, it was just simply too easy riding the political highs and lows. And what hurt the industry more is if you were a competent company that had a plan and was trending upward, like, again, not to just keep singing Topher's praises, but, he hired a gunsmith. He stocked all the stuff to accessorize. He's made all the deals with people. He's keeping his distributors going. You want a trigger job in your 1911, we do this. We do pin and weld jobs. We, send your stuff out to get the slides cut if you want it cut. We carry all the optics. We mount them in-house if you buy them from us. We have a gunsmith here every day that can put all this stuff together for you. That can swap the triggers out. And that's, he made a huge investment into creating an infrastructure that pays for itself. The issue is whenever like Tom, Dick, and Harry jump into the game. I mean, I talked about this the last time we were here. When I was at SHOT Show with Raven, there was some guy that like stopped by our booth and was like, "I can make a holster just as good as you." And I was like, "All right, dude. Like, it's like day 4. I've slept 2 hours a night, and I might still be drunk."
Sir, I'm still drunk. Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, man. Like, since you've already established yourself as like not a customer, let me just go ahead and tell you, we make $10,000 a month. Like, the hard part's not making a holster, just like the hard part's not cooking a steak. The hard part is cooking enough steaks well enough you can charge a 30% margin to pay the bill on the premier hotel that you're in that gets the people coming in to buy the steak. Joe Rogan had someone on that was talking about like a chef versus somebody that cooks in their kitchen, and I didn't realize we needed these explanations, but there needs to be a contraction, and Delton's the first thing of the guys that were serious and took care of their money and knew that this was over. I mean, I remember sitting, we our former, hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, our former CEO was explaining the business plan to a coworker of mine. And this was probably 2022. And he was like, our map to growth. And he's like, as we grow this year, and we went up, 25% in 2021 and 40% in 2020. Well, if we can get back to going up 25%, and we're like, going up 25%. Like, at some point, this is going to stop.
Yeah.
And they're like, why? They were not from the industry, and they're no longer in the industry. But they were like, what do you mean? Why would we stop growing? And I was like, these are driven by circumstances beyond our control. And, what you do is you take this money and you invest it wisely. And you make sure that you make proper merchandising plays that don't over leverage yourself. And then you ride out the slow stuff. And what you have is you have this gradual, like, come up, you go down, but you are higher up than when you started. So you wait till the next inevitable wave. But, we've lived through, I mean, again, I'm a millennial. I've lived through, 7 unprecedented events in just my adulthood. You can leave off like 9/11 and the housing crisis. Just since I graduated high school, there's been a number of events of like, you'll never see anything like this again. And it's like,
Yeah, well,
now, lo and behold, next Tuesday.
that's a valid point. Is the fact that like regardless of whether it's firearms industry related or not, like because of the way social media is built to kind of always be that was it dopamine and the different brain chemical stuff where it's like you're we just don't react the same way to black swan events anymore. The emotional response, like I watched the Challenger explode in my third grade classroom, right, on television. The reaction kids would have to it today would likely be very, very muted, comparatively speaking, to what we had when we saw it. And I think that's just because it's like we're just bombarded with so much imagery that's shocking, and also now with the fact that it's like, well, is that even real, or is that just some, is that a scene from a video game? Is that so? Yeah, to a lot of degree, like it's hard to get that same reaction of, and I think perhaps the 1-2 punch of COVID and all the civil unrest during the pandemic time period might have been the last hurrah. I don't want to be the guy that's like making wild ass predictions, but I do think from an industry perspective, I've seen a lot of weird ripples come, whether it was the mass shootings, whether it's 9/11, things like that. And in talking to guys that have been in the industry longer than me, they all talk about like, oh, I remember when this happened, I remember when that happened. Y2K, like that was a whole ass thing. Now, it's kind of hard to conceive, short of like alien spaceships doing a War of the Worlds invasion, like shooting people with death rays. I don't know how you get people back, like with a fervor, to buy weapons. And I think that like,
well,
that's the big double whammy with that is the fact, and I wrote an article about this on LinkedIn where it was like, we're fighting the fact also that like the middle class is fighting wage stagnation coupled with the highest levels of credit card debt that they've carried in my lifetime, right? Like the average gun industry consumer, who we have historically relied on, doesn't have liquid cash to do anything with it, and their credit cards are at or near their limits, and they're paying, like, they're just servicing interest at this point, and quite frankly, sometimes they're putting the grocery bill on the credit card. So you're going to have a hard time selling somebody an $1,800 rifle and another $2,500 in accessories when he's like, I already got 5 rifles in the safe. I did that already in my life. And so now we're looking at a very different time where it's like, I don't think we have as many consumers, even with the glut of new people that entered, the firearms industry as a consumer during the pandemic and the civil unrest, where it was like, oh, there's all these new people coming into the tent. And it's like, yeah, but not enough. And it didn't sustain. It's not like we've got this whole new population that stuck around and continued to buy. They came in, they bought to make themselves feel better, and now they're sitting on the bench.
There's one thing I'll add to that. I agree with you. I think that was the last pop. I think anyone that was sitting on the fence of fear jumped one way or the other. And I think I said something similar to this the last time. It's either like, oh my God, they're burning down. They've lit my Prius on fire, regardless of my Coexist bumper sticker, regardless of, Trump is a fascist. Like, they're lighting my car on fire. Do they not know that I am with them? and they're either like, like I have an aunt who's like, we just haven't poured enough love, onto the plant of freedom. And it's like, like, I guess we have Noam Chomsky to thank for this, that like, there are bad actors. I'm not saying that we're totally innocent in the history books, but like, there are totally worse people than us, and it's not all our fault. Like, like Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't Jeffrey Dahmer because dad didn't hug him enough. Like, he was just a bad actor.
Yeah.
And then there were people that were like, holy shit, they just lit my Prius on fire. There's nothing else I can do. And they went and bought a gun. And so that was the last like fear motivated thing. And now we've got to go back. And I think the market needs to contract this. It needs to contract back to the serious enthusiast and to the serious hobbyist and to the serious shooter. And, like when we get rid of the budget ARs, inevitably you'll sell more better products. I would imagine. I don't have a business degree from Wharton, but I just know. I know whether it be the stars or the Ouija board or the fact I've been doing this for a long time, I know that there are people that are buying Andersons that would have bought something better, or Deltons or Radicals or whatever they are, that would have that they could have been compelled to buy BCA or even a Smith and Wesson Sport 3 or something like this. And the other good thing is maybe some of these big publicly traded gun companies will finally get out of like diluting the assault rifle business with this modern sporting nonsense that they do, of like, yeah, the MSP4 is our modern sporting rifle for the tactical hunter, and it's like, bro, these are for killing people. Like, in the words of the philosopher Chuck Pressburg, I own assault rifles because sometimes people need to be assaulted, and like, you paid a marketing firm $100,000 to rename this so it's more comfortable for your golf buddies that work for more liberal companies for you, and y'all just need to get out of it, and it needs to contract back down to the guys that really have a stake in the game, and it stops becoming this. Because what kills shops is really good shops is the three shitty shops around them going out of business and having to liquidate everything and crunching their cash flow for 90 days to zero. Yeah. And, what will kill a really, really good gun company that works really hard to make good products and market, and I'll keep, we'll keep going down the Sons of Liberty rabbit hole here. What would kill that is, I'm not saying that they're in any way, shape, or form in danger, is if there was a huge influx of $99 ARs that no one cared. Now it's so cheap it doesn't matter. I can buy 8 of them before I can buy your one budget gun. I'll just shoot through all of them. So I think it does need to get smaller. There are companies that as you walk around SHOT Show and you're like, what does that person do? Like, and you and I talked about it, the YouTuber crunch. That's going to be the first place that just gets iced.
It's already happening. Like, their marketing budgets have been slashed. The number of people that from February 1st till today that I have seen change their status on LinkedIn to open to work, and that's the thing. It's like it's been so many at once that like the head counts are getting slashed industry wide. There's bodies getting thrown overboard left and right, and they're cutting in budget areas where it's like that. There's no way if they cut the marketing team by 70% that the budgets to support influencers and affiliates and things like that is going to still be there. Like it's the contraction, because it's like we need to. It's like all the blood's getting pulled into the core of the body just to try to keep the heart and brain alive, because right now the extremities are expendable, and I think that's
also good though. Is that I'm not sure that in the long run, like, what were those people really worth to you, and how much did they really sell? And again, like, you can talk to certain influencers. I'm not saying it all. I mean, one of my favorite dudes that used to work at OP that now works somewhere else, not out of any batteries, and just went to a manufacturer of theirs, posted something yesterday that's like, we need some content destroyers. And shout out to Gear Grinder Mike. We need some content destroyers. I mean, I can't tell you how many SMEs that I know, like true SMEs, like the Chris Sizeloves of the world, the Travis Rolfs of the world, the dudes that did this for decades. I've given Chuck a lot of kudos, the Chucks of the world. That spend an entire, wide portion of their time and energy dispelling nonsense that was invented by like YouTubers in their backyard in Tennessee. And so like, I'm kind of glad that these guys are going away. There's some in Tennessee, not the T-Rex Arms people, before y'all start a second crusade against me. And like, it's they're like advocating for like thermal sights, like how you need thermal sights to defend your homestead. I'm like, my brother in Christ. I'm like, I'll give 2 Rangers or 2 Marines a 240, and it doesn't matter what Kratos L3 thermal sight you're standing behind, they're going to cut your house in half. Like,